What is up everyone, Hero276 here, and welcome to today's video and welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be featuring QWILFISH in the Spring Cup. QWILFISH is a poison and water type Pokemon with the moveset of Poison Sting, Aqua Tail, and Sludge Wave. This Pokemon has a very interesting style of play that differs from its other poison and water type counterpart, Tentacruel, in this cup. Tentacruel relies on heavy fast move pressure as well as debuffs from Acid Spray and occasional water damage from Scald. QWILFISH's play is more of a bait and nuke type of tactic, relying less on fast move pressure and more on charge move pressure. I decided to pair both of these Pokemon with a Ferrothorn in the lead. As you know, I really love the ABB style team of play, and I wanted to run something consistent like that in the Spring Cup. I am able to go on a massive win streak with this team, and I'm currently up 300 points in ELO with it, and I'm pushing towards Veteran as we speak. Before we dive into today's videos, I just wanted to give a special shout out to my Spotify page. If you're enjoying the music used in this video and other videos, please be sure to check out my Spotify page where you'll have access to all of the music that I've released so far. You can buy my albums there for just $4.99 each, or you're more than welcome to follow me on the page so you can stay notified about all my album releases and listen to my music for free. Now the battles that I'm showcasing for you today are a 4-in-1 set and 3 bonus battles. While the lead against Alolan Ninetales is a good lead, we do have 2 poison types in the back, so it's best to switch in the Tentacruel and try to bait out whatever they have in the back. In this case, they look to be pretty weak to Tentacruel as they switch in a Sunny CHERRIM. CHERRIM does not have a good matchup here at all. We poison jab them down without having to even break a sweat. My opponent comes in with a Pelipper. Despite being only 30 seconds into the match, this looks like to be a good game. My opponent lets the Acid Spray go through, and now I'm able to reach another Acid Spray, but they're throwing a move here. If it's Hurricane, it does take me out, but they go for Weather Ball, which means they're going to now be 4 stages debuffed when I come in with my next Pokemon. Acid Spray does massive damage. The poison jabs are really ramping up, and the Pelipper's on 1 HP, which means I'll probably send in the QWILFISH to get ahead on energy, which I do. In comes the Alolan Ninetales, but they've got nowhere to go. I can let this move go through. Even if it is a Psyshock, it will not KO. I'll be able to reach an Aqua Tail. No need to really build up to the Sludge Wave. Aqua Tail will still do a tremendous amount of damage. My opponent lets that go through, and now I could just come in with Ferrothorn and look for a very hefty Bullet Seed farm down. Opponent is going to throw their energy. They're playing this out like a good sport. But Ferrothorn is going to crush this Alolan Ninetales. I'm going for the Bullet Seed farm down, and I get it for the win. Hopping into game number 2, picking up a negative lead up against Atropius. I am going to switch out of this matchup into one of my 2 poison types. I come in with Tentacruel, and my opponent comes in with a Dragon Breath Gyarados. I'm going to go for the Acid Spray here, and afterwards, because Gyarados is so glassy in the Great League, these poison jabs are going to tear through this Gyarados, which is why I love Tentacruel in this cup so much. Crunch gets me very low, but these poison jabs will chip away. Now I'm going to go for the Scald, recognizing that an Acid Spray will probably not KO. Opponent shields it up, they get the attack fall, and Gyarados survives on 1 HP. I'm unable to flip switch, but I do at the very least have a shield advantage, so I'm hoping to use that in the endgame. This should just be the Aqua Tail right here. They don't have enough for a Crunch. Ferrothorn gets chipped a little bit, but that's okay. Opponent will probably come back in with the Tropius. I pivot into QWILFISH. My opponent is throwing in their energy. Perhaps they don't have a good response for QWILFISH in the back. I shield up. It's a Leaf Blade, but it turns out they have a phenomenal response to QWILFISH in Empoleon. Empoleon double resists the Sludge Wave and the Poison Sting, and Aqua Tail here, as you're going to see, does not do a lot of damage due to its resistance. At this point, I just need to keep spamming out these Aqua Tails, hoping to get Empoleon pretty low. I'm going to let the Drill Peck go through. Drill Peck will not quite KO from this range, but the next Waterfall will. However, I am able to fire off an Aqua Tail. This gets the Penguin low. At this point, I can come in with Ferrothorn. I'm just going to look for the farm down. A Drill Peck is probably going to do more than an Aerial Ace from Tropius, so I will shield it up. My opponent sends back in the Tropius, and this is tough. I have to rely on Flash Cannon doing enough damage. It looks like it can 2-shot from this range, so I'm hopeful that with a bait, I should be able to outpace them to 2 Aerial Aces. I should be able to comfortably tank the first, but the second is what I'm worried about. Going for the Power Whip. They're 2 Air Slashes off from their next, praying for the final shield. They give it to me. 1, 2 more bullet seeds gets me to the flash cannon. Flash cannon will KO from this range, and 1 bullet seed will farm down the Empoleon for the win. Moving into game number 3, picking up a phenomenal lead into Lantern. My opponent will switch out of this matchup into a Trevenant, and I come in with my Tentacruel. Tentacruel doesn't have a great matchup here, especially when they build up to the Shadow Ball, so I am going to shield it out of respect. Unfortunately, I do get baited with the Seed Bomb, but I should be able to double shield in this matchup and flip it comfortably after going for the Acid Spray. My opponent does let the Acid Spray go through, but after double shielding, I should be in a decent spot here. They full send the Shadow Ball, but I am going to be able to Poison Jab down. Unfortunately, that does come at the cost of 2 shields, and the Lantern is still plenty healthy in the back. But the good news about preserving the Tentacruel is that they can't Spark down here, and we will be able to debuff them to Oblivion. This looks like a CMP tie here, so if they threw their energy, I will gladly take this. And they also gave me a shield on the first Acid Spray, which was quite nice, so I'm perfectly content with double shielding the Tentacruel if this is the effect that I get. I bring in the Ferrothorn. They have Galarian Wheezing in the back. I send in QWILFISH and immediately fire off an Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail grabs the final shield, and I'm perfectly okay with this. At this point, my opponent is going to fire off a Brutal Swing, and because I'm getting low, I'm going to just go straight for Aqua Tail. Even though Sludge Wave is the better move to build up to, I'm afraid of a Brutal Swing KOing, and my opponent does go for the Brutal Swing. At this point, I should be able to barely tank this, but they will get in a nice farm down. This makes me worried about their energy. In comes Ferrothorn. I try to go for the Power Whip, but I lose CMP. This is unfortunately the overheat. It's double super effective, and I lose the game. Hopping into game number 4, and we have a lead up against BRELOOM. This is not great, but we do have 2 poison types in the back, so I switch into Tentacruel, and they come in with a Poliwrath, and this is still a great matchup for Tentacruel. Despite the Mud Shots being super effective, all of their charge moves here are resisted, whether it be Ice Punch, Dynamic Punch, Scald, Hydro Pump, you name it, Tentacruel resists it. At this point, they go for the Ice Punch, but it does not do a lot of damage, as you can see. I'm going to go for the Acid Spray. It grabs a shield, and if they're going for the Dynamic Punch, I'm going to shield it up just to be safe. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't KO, but I do get nervous. I shield it up, and because they commit a shield, I'm perfectly fine with the shield investment. I farm down and safely preserve Switch. We know they have the BRELOOM. Their final Pokemon is Wigglytuff. They are completely core broken by water and poison types. Tentacruel is starting to get low. We get a shield with the Acid Spray. I'm able to reach another Acid Spray. This will do some nice damage onto the Wigglytuff, even though it's a very weak move. And we farm down with less than half health remaining. BRELOOM comes back in, but it's much too late. We're going to be able to reach the Sludge Wave in time. Seed Bomb from this range will not KO, even though it hits very hard. But we'll be able to reach the Sludge Wave against the BRELOOM. This will definitely one-shot from this range and give us the win. Hopping into the final game of the set, leading into Araquanid. This is not a great lead, so I'm going to pivot into one of my poison types, and they send in an Abomasnow almost simultaneously. This is a very good matchup for Tentacruel, so now we should be in a very good spot. And even if it's the Energy Ball that they decide to throw, Tentacruel should be able to tank it just fine and Poison Jab down before they reach another move. So now we comfortably preserve Switch advantage. My opponent sends in a Mawile, and I'm going to go for an Acid Spray bait. Really hoping I can get a shield here, threatening a Scald. My opponent lets it through, which is very unfortunate, but at the very least, they're now 2 stages debuffed in defense. My opponent decides to send their energy for some reason, and this allows me to get in a couple of poison jabs. Now I can send in the QWILFISH. QWILFISH is able to reach an Aqua Tail. My opponent will give up their first shield, and at this point, they're firing off a power-up punch, but I don't need to respect it. My opponent sends off the power-up punch. It does very minimal damage. I'm at another Aqua Tail, and before they get to their next move, I should be able to reach a third Aqua Tail. So my opponent lets the move go through. It's just the Araquanid in the back. I should be able to make it comfortably to the Sludge Wave, and at a 2-to-1 shield disadvantage, my opponent definitely won't be shielding that up. I can now bring in Ferrothorn, comfortably tank whatever they throw in case it's a Bubble Beam bait, but it is the Bug Buzz. Ferrothorn tanks it, and we're going to make it past 1.5 Power Whips. Power Whip number 1 should be able to grab the shield from my opponent. Power Whip ends up going through because they realized it's over, and we take the win. And now we're going to claim the set rewards from our 4-1. The other day, I actually did get my first legendary in what felt like an eternity, and it was well worth the wait because it was a 100% IV Lugia that I'll display here on the right. Hopping into the first of 3 bonus battles, picking up a terrible lead up against Sunny CHERRIM. I immediately pivot into Tentacruel and my opponent responds with a Venusaur. This is a matchup that I actually can win in even shield scenarios. However, I did not know that at the time, so I end up letting this move go through. Then again, this was probably one of my first battles with this team, so I wasn't quite used to it. Now I'm going to go for the Scald here, hoping for the attack drop or the KO. My opponent does let it go through, and I do somehow maintain switch. At this point now, I can bring in the QWILFISH. QWILFISH here, gonna go for the Aqua Tail. Even though this is resisted, it would still do a lot of damage here. My opponent does commit the shield. I get in a free Poison Sting of energy. My opponent full sends the Solar Beam, and I commit the shield, which is a great shield. They have a Azumarill in the back. My opponent surrenders, and that is game, set, and match. Ferrothorn into Lantern in the next match. This is perfect. My opponent safe switches into their own Ferrothorn, and I pivot into my Tentacruel. The reason being, Tentacruel can apply some nice debuffs here with the Acid Spray, so even though everything is resisted, I can still do okay here. At this point, I'm going to go for the Acid Spray. Acid Spray does get no shielded, and this should make the mirror match when I come back in a lot more manageable. My opponent is going to throw a mirror shot. That's not enough to KO. I'm now throwing the Scald. This is double debuffed, and my opponent will take big damage from it. At this point, I should be able to shield once, and I should be able to maintain switch advantage very comfortably. Mirror Shot does grab my first shield, and they're at a second. However, I should be able to tank this one just barely, and I should be able to take the next Bullet Seed and farm down. I am down a shield, but I do have the alignment I need to send in Ferrothorn up against this Lantern. And even better, I'm able to reach an Acid Spray, which means now this Lantern is debuffed. I come in with the Ferrothorn in the back. They have Galarian Weezing, and with 2 shields, I have no idea how good of a matchup this is going to be. QWILFISH is super spammy. Aqua Tail gets it down to about half health, and they throw after 5. At this point, this should either be the Sludge or the Brutal Swing. It's the Sludge, and now I'm going to go for another Aqua Tail, looking to put the pressure on this Galarian Weezing. Galarian Weezing does commit the first shield. My opponent throws again. I'm going to let it through. It's the Overheat. It nearly KOs, but I hang on and reach the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail here will be forcing the second shield for my opponent. At this point, I immediately switch into Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn is going to overfarm in this matchup with the Lantern, and I should be able to tank anything they throw. Thunderbolt, not doing a ton of damage. I have 100 energy, throwing the first Power Whip. This will not KO, but what I'm looking to do is farm down with Bullet Seeds. I'm 1 off from the Flash Cannon. Galarian Weezing has a move, so I have to commit the shield. Unfortunately, just the Sludge, but I just wanted to shield it out of caution. And now I have the Flash Cannon. This will one-shot the Galarian Weezing and give us the win. Hopping into the final battle of the video, leading into a Mawile. This is atrocious. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch into my Tentacruel. My opponent is staying in, recognizing it's a good matchup, and they're going immediately for a power-up punch. I do not have to shield this. It is resisted. My opponent tries to catch the Scald onto a Tropius, but I'm able to hold on to my energy, and this means I get to debuff this Tropius, and their switch timer is nowhere close to coming up. This means I'll be able to let at least one move go through and comfortably farm down. My opponent is at the Leaf Blade, but this is only neutral damage here, and Tropius doesn't hit very hard, so Tentacruel is able to sponge it well, and I am able to Poison Jab down, leaving with switch advantage. My opponent sends in the Mawile, but I'm going for the Scald this time. Throwing the Scald, it lands and does some nice damage, and Tentacruel nearly takes out 2 Pokemon by itself. At this point, they just have a power-up punch here. I'm sending in the QWILFISH to tank it. 1 Poison Sting farms down. In the back, they have a Charmeleon Ninetales, and Charmeleon Ninetales could not hide forever against my 2 water poison types. Going for the Aqua Tail, that grabs the shield. Building up to the Sludge Wave again, but baiting again with the Aqua Tail. This should force the second shield for my opponent. And you know what? I'm feeling bold today. I'm going to shield up the QWILFISH, and we're going to use it to finish the game. Going for the Sludge Wave, we're able to make it. This will do more than enough damage to take out the Alola Ninetales from this range and give us the win. Overall, QWILFISH was so fun to use in this cup. It has such versatility with its play of bait and nuke style, which contrasts very differently from Tentacruel or even Toxapex, which is banned in this cup. So having a little bit more consistency with the ABB style team and two different Pokemon with two completely different styles of play made this team very versatile and fun. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.